We're going to launch straight into our Sustainable Technology Forum, talking about tech which is fit for today and for tomorrow's purposes. And if you have any questions at all that you would like to raise with our panel, who I'm just about to introduce, then just use that chat function on your screen. Your questions will come directly to me, and I'll do my best to pass the questions over to our panel. Well, let's introduce the panel and say good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. Really good to see you. Let me introduce you all. We have TPT, Chief Information Officer at Wasco, Kenneth Lowe, Chief Technology Officer at ST Engineering, Charmaine Valmont, CISO at Boetes Equity Ventures, and Rajesh Sura, Head of Data Engineering and Analytics at Amazon. Welcome all. It's really good to have your company. Thanks for being here. Sustainable technology is, of course, a very broad umbrella subject, and it's sustainable technology is clearly going to mean different things to different companies. We have some very large organizations represented here. So can we kick off by asking what sustainable technology means to your organization and what's deployed? TP, I wonder if I can be grossly unfair and pick on you to start.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So in my company, we are an energy company. We are operating more in the oil and gas sectors, engineering and bioenergy as well. So in this company, I'm looking into two aspects here. I think the first one is really on the IT part of it, which is the information technology, how sustainable it is. The other part is more for the business operations, or we call it operational technologies. So if I look into the IT side, it means that how we are going to optimize with our IT infrastructures, applications, the way how we design it. So in this part of it, we are looking into more on the energy efficiency on the public cloud providers, for example, Amazon itself or Google. And at the same time, we are looking into how we can modernize our architecture of our applications and design. But for the operational technologies, we are also looking into how we can reduce the carbon emissions for our operations. For example, installing sensors into our equipments, understanding about our machines itself, the health status, and doing predictive maintenance. At the same time, we are also installing solar installation in our plants because we actually have a scope 1 and scope 2 net zero targets by 2026.
Thank you. Charmaine, may I ask you to pick up next?
All right. So for Boetes Equity Ventures, we are a multi-industry organization from manufacturing to energy, construction, real estate, data science. So on the side of, now that we've talked about, and Che had talked about energy and renewables, for our organization is really understanding and working with our ADI, which is our Boetes Data Innovation team, which is our data science team, in terms of ensuring that we have the proper models, right? That we have the efficiencies in that area. Our data and science engineering teams really prioritize smaller and optimized, more efficient models, and we are able to use those models across the organizations. And of course, having a sustainable infrastructure. We're a hybrid organization. We're less on-premise, but more on cloud, right? But we also have capabilities wherein we have synergies across the organization in renewable energy, efficient cooling, etc., in our infrastructure organizations or business units. And of course, data hygiene, and we can't get away from that, right? Data will require lots of energy. So going back to the first point of understanding the type of data that we're going to use for models and artificial intelligence, of course, we don't want to just overcomplicate and use too much data that we don't need, right? So we need to be cognizant of that, because storing and processing data will require energy, right? So data lifecycle management is quite important for us.
Your organisation, Charmaine, is such a disparate, such a huge conglomerate of organisations covering all sorts of sectors. I suppose you're a microcosm of the entire global world situation. I'm assuming that some of your companies are advancing in different directions completely to the others. I'm not sure how you keep track of it, or how you manage one strategy to fit all, or don't you? How do you do it?
Absolutely. And one of the key things, the beauty of the way that it's set up and the differences in different organizations, we try to create the synergies between our business units or our subs. We do have a large financial sector, financial industry, from banking to fintech. And then we also have our data science and artificial intelligence. So we're creating synergies in each of our businesses, like power, right? In power, we have several models and several projects where we really work to ensure that we lower down our emissions. That's number one. We're trying to get into a 50-50 mix, and slowly growing and improving and increasing our renewable energy market. Now, the other piece is on manufacturing, right? Manufacturing. So we have OT and IT that we're working through in that area. And this is a really good opportunity for us to develop the models by which to be able to produce faster, right? Better, right? Using the proper mix in terms of our foods. So we have foods, farm. So all of these areas, we have to do these models across. And where we can create synergies between the business units, that's actually where we actually thrive, right? A model that may fit in the financial or business sector in context may be able to be utilized in another business area. And where we have common models, we really work hard to ensure that we are creating the synergies and not duplicating and not increasing that footprint. Right.
Kenneth, sustainable technologies for ST Engineering.
Thank you very much, Tim. First of all, I'd like to really say a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the audience and also my fellow panelists. I'm really in line with what Charmaine just shared. I thought synergy is actually the keyword for sustainability. So at ST Engineering, I come from the commercial aerospace business cluster. So as you know, we are the world's largest airframe MRO. So we touch about 1,000 aircraft every year with 400 over customers. So that is becoming a driving force for us to move towards sustainable technology adoption, because not only we believe in it, our clients believe in sustainable solution as well. So actually that is a very important driving force. And in commercial aerospace, ST Engineering, we are taking a two-pronged approach. We are open to all technology that can help us to achieve these two things. So the first approach is actually to use less energy. I think, as you know, we can't just keep increasing the usage and consumption. So we have to look at more energy efficient processes, technology, equipment. And I think this is something that we have to do, which allow us to reduce our footprint. And the second approach is actually to use as many green electrons as possible. And as you know, in Singapore, we have limited access to green energy. So we have to be innovative. So what we do in our hangar, which we maintains aircraft, we put solar panel. We started putting solar panel more than 10 years ago. So from a small step, and then today, in terms of the aerospace company, we're the third largest in terms of solar energy production. So it takes us almost a decade, to reach where we are. And we are happy to share with you that about 36% of our energy consumption today in Singapore are from the solar PV. And I think this two-pronged approach has to be complementary, because if you use less energy, you are starting right. And if you could tap on more green energy, either through your own infrastructure, so you can create a microgrid, or through the so-called policy set up by the government to have more access to green energy, I think that will be the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Rajesh, it's my understanding that Amazon is also quite a large company. What particular examples can you give us of how Amazon is deploying sustainable technology?
Yeah, definitely. Amazon is a large enterprise and itself is a provider for infrastructure services. Provides infrastructure. But my world for the past 16 years has been around data engineering, cloud infrastructure, and AI-driven analytics. Building enterprise scale platforms and supporting thousands of users and petabytes of data. So today I'll take a different lens. I'll talk about sustainability. In how sustainable thinking translates into data and analytics world. So how we store, how we process, and how we serve data in ways that are really efficient and at the same time responsible and built for lasting long. So when we discuss sustainability in the data world, usually it's very broad. It's not about carbon emissions. I see it as a collection of practices, that will make these systems run smarter for a longer period of time and not just cleaner. And when we talk about sustainability in data engineering and analytics space, top of my mind comes the tiered storage policies. These are the policies which will define how what data deserves premium real-time storage and what can live in colder, slower, and cheaper layers. So it sounds simple, but it drastically reduces your storage footprint and in turn the related infrastructure energy. So and other pillars similarly are serverless and event-driven processing. So you spin the compute only when there is work to do. In retail terms, instead of refreshing your analytics for every single product every hour, you refresh only what has been changed. So that's 80% or 90% less compute, and still you are getting the same insight. And at the same time, designing reusable data models and shared metadata. So this completely avoids the similar transformations. Again, avoiding the compute and again bringing efficiency in the infrastructure energy usage. And last but not least is automated lifecycle governance. So this governance should automatically stale all the data sets without any human intervention. So you identify that, okay, hey, the system should automatically identify, hey, this data is no longer meaningful, or this data is no longer required to have active computing behind it. So you need to put that kind of life cycle governance policies in order to avoid unnecessary computation, unnecessary storage, and bring efficiency. So that is how I would see sustainability in the data world. And I would also second what Charmaine brought up, right? Large language models. You don't need a large language model for every problem that you're trying to solve with AI. You don't need so much of data. You don't need a PhD brain in order to address a routine task. So we need to work towards small language models. If you are trying to solve a problem in a customer center, you don't need a large language model which has healthcare data, which has supply chain optimization data. You only need what is required in order to do the job. So focus more on small language models and address the issues with the right amount of data. And the small language models will also shift the usage of rich high compute GPUs to regular, even some high efficiency CPUs. So that's how you bring sustainability into technology and reduce your digital footprint.
Thank you.
Storage footprint, sorry.
Please do. No, we have four very different but very significant organizations represented here. And I must ask the obvious question. It would be remiss not to. Everything you're doing relies on data, and therefore we all participate in the proliferation of data centers, arguably one of the least environmentally friendly rollouts in recent years because of the vast amount of fossil fuel that it consumes. How do you balance the need in your strategies between the need for scalable IT infrastructure and the obvious environmental impact of data centers that we need? Rajesh?
Yep. That's actually a very great question, because scalability and sustainability, these are often seen as opposites, but in reality they actually reinforce each other if they are really designed well in the very beginning. So I like to think of it in this way. A scalable system should also be a sustainable system by default, meaning it expands only when business demand grows, and it also should contract automatically when the demand drops. So the real challenge is designing that architecture to do this whole thing predictively and at the same time intelligently. So there, I would see this from three different levels again. One, find the balance with elastic infrastructure. What I mean by that is you need to scale responsibly. Like traditional systems, right? They often run with peak capacity all the time, but you don't need that peak capacity all the time. You need to rely on the modern architectures, which are auto scaling, and at the same time they have event driven design. So the compute expands only when the workload increases, and at the same time, today we have a lot of machine learning models which can forecast when the peak is coming. They can analyze patterns as such as traffic seasonality, query volume, and batch processing cycles. So they will help you design this auto scaling and event driven triggering. So elastic architecture is one way to balance this scalability with sustainability. Number two, workload placements, like where and how you run these things matter. Number one is sustainability can be improved by right sizing and right placing, which means as I talked about it earlier, where to use GPUs versus where to use CPUs, like choosing whether you should run an LLM or an SLM. And number two, organizations are also increasingly geo-balancing workloads, which mean you need to identify areas where renewable energy supply is higher and where data center utilization is optimal. And you need to shift your workloads dynamically to those regions in order to utilize more renewable energy and less carbon footprint. So this kind of intelligent placement will not compromise performance. It only runs the same workload with most resource conscious way possible. And number three, last but not the least, operational intelligence, like the observability and the feedback loops. Today organizations, most of the time, they fail because they are not able to. It's not about they are not able to address an inefficient process. It's that they don't have visibility into what is inefficient. So that observability is the key. You need to find what processes are inefficient in your organization and then address them accordingly.
Shemaine, I saw you nodding vigorously at some of the early points that Rajesh was making there, particularly around the relationship between scalability and sustainability.
Charmaine, you are on mute.
I think you're on mute.
I just
Charmaine.
noticed that. There you go. So one of the key things, and it's one of the reasons why I was nodding while Rajesh was talking about having an elastic architecture, and it's exactly the reason we moved in that mindset several years ago, going on 5-6 years now, where we moved from the heavy hybrid to all cloud. And not to say that because that's what everybody in all organizations were talking about, cloud only, born and raised in the cloud type environments. That's not necessarily true in all organizations. There are organizations that will require a mix and a strict hybrid because of regulatory requirements. Now, when we talk about elasticity and being able to scale, it became something that we needed, and that was a necessity for us. Our organization has grown. We've moved several times. Now we're going from a centralized to a decentralized capability. Still using the entire organization. However, being that we are now majority, or some business units are majority on cloud, we were able to take advantage of the elastic nature of applications, right, of our workloads. And that allowed us to compute, utilize data, and compute as we needed. It's there when you need it. You can turn it off when you don't. So that really talks about having the ability to move and scale and support a big project versus 6 months later, it's no longer a need, and we can easily turn that off. Now, these scalable, these projects that are in the elastic environment do not necessarily compute in the same manner as the traditional, right? So we need to be cognizant, and we don't necessarily support from a technology and security perspective the same way. So we went through the learning process of being able to optimize the elastic environment and the regular, not necessarily, or infrastructure as a service, IaaS environments for our organization. Right? And in some cases where there is either a limitation on the organization that will require some on-premise, we have since moved to scaling down the data centers, so to speak, right, that would support them, where it used to scale and housed with other data centers. We've since moved that, and we're able to locally do that because of managing data. Proper data management lifecycle allows you to understand the data that you need, that you're currently using, cycle, and remove data you don't need, right? And that is the biggest lesson that we learned, right? Even if you are on cloud, you also need to understand what you're already processing. Because over time, some of that data is no longer useful, and you should be able to cycle those out.
It always comes down to data. Always. TP, do you agree with that? And how do you, in your organisation, reconcile that dichotomy between the need for scalability and the need for sustainability as well, in terms of the difficulty of using data centres, or the difficulty in terms of sustainability of using data centres?
I think Rajesh and Charmaine has pretty much covered everything that I'm looking at as well. We are adopting a cloud-first strategy, definitely, but because we are also a company that is operating a lot near to the offshore area, near to the ports, in the rural areas where internet connectivity is still a fundamental issue. So we have to go into a hybrid kind of architecture here. But we are also looking into the centralized and decentralization kind of a approach where enterprise applications will try to use all the cloud kind of platforms coming with the artificial intelligence as well. But we are also leaving some of the core operational applications to be on-premise at each of the plants. And so, I mean, from a cloud perspective, the more we use, of course, if we are able to optimize, doing the right sizing, optimizing our virtual machines, even designing our applications into a Kubernetes kind of architecture, it also helps us to do some of the financial savings as well. So there's quite a bit of considerations whenever we want to draw new applications in our organization.
And it boils down just sensible business decision, doesn't it? Really, Kenneth. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I want to move on to talking about how you measure the impact of your technologies. But I mean, it's almost always a good decision for the bottom line. Clearly, is that the key metric that drives you? I hope it is.
It is actually. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the discussion earlier on we talk about is sustainability, also a business enabler. So I think the answer is going to be yes. Most businesses will always consider you want to get onto a sustainability project because it is financially viable. There's a strong business case. I think earlier on when Rajesh talked about the ability to use more not everything require LM, and I totally agree with him because I think that perhaps the world has gone really comfortable in typing into the chat GPT and then you run a query, a very simple query. And I think that this is where ST Engineering is taking a balanced approach. We believe that there is always use case for a cloud computing and also a use case for edge computing. So this is where actually we are balancing some of our work that is carried out in a hangar, when we are working on an aircraft, required only edge computing. And we find that that is actually a lot more efficient and it is sustainable as well. And therefore, it builds a very strong business case. And we also have cases whereby we run a lot of customer data. We have to analyze the customer data in order to work on predictive maintenance. And those kind of scenario, you really do have to get onto the cloud because you're processing not just you're actually accessing not only data from the data lake, you also look at the data house and you look at the data fabric at the same time. So you're actually having a very complex system to work with. And under those circumstances, we realize that the business case actually bring us the more complex but more efficient methods of computing.
Rajesh, can you touch from your perspective upon the question of measurement and what metrics you use, and perhaps that balance between the bottom line, but also the need to improve processes for the sake of improving those processes and becoming more efficient and less wasteful? I think you're muted, Rajesh. It's the perennial problem. We've got you.
Measurement is where the conversation around sustainability becomes real. Because a lot of times we talk about sustainability and we look at sustainability as a different element completely. It is a different project. But I believe that is totally wrong. You need to look at sustainability as an integration into everything that you do.
Yes.
So in technology, especially in data engineering and analytics, right? Measurement just doesn't mean counting, the emissions or the energy usage. While carbon footprint and energy draw are definitely important, the most direct and actionable indicators are the ones that show how effectively our systems produce value relatively to the resources that they consume. So metrics such as compute to insight ratio. So how much compute does it take to deliver one useful decision? The lower is the better. And it also measures how much compute time, memory, or cost it takes to produce one meaningful insight. Similarly, the query efficiency. We measure redundant scans, cache hits, trimming. Even 10% of duplication can save thousands of compute hours and terabytes of input-output operations. Avoiding all of this on a single day, if you look at a scale of Amazon, and then model cost efficiency, which we basically measure the energy per inference, and we also use pruning or quantization to lighten the large models. So these are some of the different metrics that we use in order to measure how we bring efficiency into every workflow that we are building today in the data and analytics space. And for retail, this might mean by understanding the cost per sales insights. So leaders not only know, what insight is driving their sales and how much of sales is driven, but also the cost of infrastructure to find out that insight. So it is super important to let the leaders know about the cost. So we are asking the right questions. We are not spending unnecessary energy on the questions that are never, getting into light for action.
I did want to get to that piece about sustainability technology actually driving the business objectives. Isn't it, as you say, it's an integral part and can't be separated out. Charmaine, do you have a take on that?
So 2 points. One is against the difference between having to utilize large language models and straight robotics, RPA, right? And that distinction, and understanding what parts of the business will need the data and analytics. That's number one, and that allows us again to manage and optimize the use of data and the use of these systems. And I like what you just was talking about. And it wasn't just about your ROI from using your predictive or models, right? But one of the key things that we also look into, especially in the power industry or in our operational technology environment, is the ability and the use of AI, right? In terms of the maintenance accuracy. As we know, operational technologies is legacy equipment, right? And having the capability to understand how AI can predict the failures, our servers, our turbines, our PLCs, or SCADA, quickly and efficiently. So this allows us to be able to now, it becomes data that we allow to enable the organization to either replace, right, and maintain the business going forward. We not only do that in the operational technology space, we also do that in the financial environment, right? Because we do work, we have three different levels of financial industries or organizations: a regular bank, a savings bank, a fintech, right? And in doing so, we are able. This is where AI was really a key benefit, right? And at that time, 10 years ago, it must have been 7 to 10 years ago, we didn't really think about emissions. We didn't really think about sustainability. But as a natural course, this is how we learned that the data we were utilizing needed to be optimized, right? And again, going back to how we're managing that data and how we're using that data, and connecting that to how it's enabling the business, not just in an ROI format, but from an efficiency and a productivity format.
And TP, your take on that, is that your experience?
So we are also using IT to help to enable the business part, especially when we are measuring our Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon emissions. The thing is, because in the past, we have a lot of different countries' operations, they are working in different models, different processes. I think when we come into this kind of exercise, it helps to stimulate, are we actually measuring the right emissions data for the whole group? Are we using this kind of a standardized processes? Are we measuring this apple and apple kind of a data here? I think through this kind of a digital transformation, which we are leveraging data management to help, the ESG team actually feedback to me is that, oh, it's really good because we drill down into the actual operational processes where there are a lot of hidden kind of gaps that we have not realized that we might be defining some of the processes at a group level with, using some of the global frameworks, but in reality, it might be very different of that. So it's not just about applying IT kind of technologies, but it's also it's a part of a whole exercise and journey that we are walking through with our business team to do data analytics, to use the AI to help us to analyze some of the hidden insights as well. And of course, not only for the statutory kind of reporting, but also for our business management kind of a dashboarding and reporting as well.
I came into this discussion wanting to touch upon what single technological investment a company can make today to achieve tangible outcomes. And I think I wonder whether we're already there. Is it an investment in your data or AI? I suppose it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? I mean, does anybody want to pick up on that? The single biggest and best investment that you can make. Kenneth.
Yeah. In fact, earlier on when you mentioned about the importance of data, right? So we are in fact looking at beyond just data because, for example, we need a lot of data center, and we are really looking at scope 3 as well. So although we subscribe to the service, but the scope 3 comes back to us eventually. So we are increasingly looking at data center that has a very low PUE. I think we are all familiar with that. But I think more importantly is also about the technology that is going to be able to support the data center, because I think we can't live without data anymore. And for example, AI. So my take is actually the single technology that is most important right now is to provide that clean energy to support the data center. I think that's a single source of higher usage of energy. And I know this is controversial, so there are discussion on nuclear technology. But personally, I feel that we have come to a stage, especially in Singapore, that we are starting to look at the possibility of applying the nuclear technology in order to provide that clean energy to support our data center. So my take is actually it's going to be a technology that is going to be helping us to secure energy security, especially the green energy.
Well, that's an interesting answer that I wasn't expecting. That's fascinating. TP, may I ask from your perspective within your organization?
So I would just really say there's any single kind of a most important technology investment, but I think it's coming back to how we are leveraging our data to help our business, because we are also investing a lot on our operational technologies, but are we actually investing correctly or getting back the ROI? Or even we are investing in a very sustainable form. I think this is where the IT and data and AI comes in to help to accelerate and enable our business team. So because we are actually kind of a brown energy company doing energy transition currently, we are going for more greener side of it. So sometimes the IT kind of let's say CO2 emissions is considered not as substantial compared to our whole operations itself. So I think our focus now is still more on enabling our business part. And later on, when scope 3 comes in, that will be, we will look into that maybe in a year or two. But our current focus is still on the scope 1 and scope 2 itself.
Thank you. Rajesh, are you going to tell me investment in your data or in AI both together at the same time, or data centers? What are you going to plump for?
If I have to pick one, that will be data observability and optimization intelligence. Because you can't optimize what you can't see. So it is super important to build that observability across every process that you have built to automatically identify where an inefficiency is. So you need to, like, data observability, comes definitely first for me.
And Charmaine, you are fortunate enough to have the last word on the subject, if you would.
So first and foremost, as we compute, we need energy. And I agree with Kenneth in terms of at the bottom of it all, we need to develop a way to be able to use and produce more green energy. That's number one. That's one of the key things about this power. In the Philippines as one of the main power distribution companies and generating companies here in the Philippines is getting that 50-50 mix and hopefully get the 60-40 mix and moving away from our thermal into the renewable. So we've over the last couple of years, we've invested highly on moving away, drawing down our thermal and moving up our solar. And also looking at hydro. And you're right, we all have to think about nuclear at some point, right? But the next thing is really when we don't have enough energy to go around, we need to optimize the data that we're utilizing. And that is where I do agree with Rajesh in understanding exactly what data you're using to make your decisions and what data you're using to be productive. Those are two different data sets. Huh? Data sets that allow you to make the decisions and data sets that allow you to process data efficiently. And the excess, and I cannot stress this enough. We've gone through this exercise and understanding how much data your organization is actually consuming. Right, you're consuming X amount of data, and how much of that is actually useful, how much is that needs to be life cycled out. And in your architecture, understanding what part of your architecture is using that much data, right?
And I wonder how many organizations are actually sifting out the data they don't need. I mean, it's a cracking point. My guess is many organizations are not.
And Rajesh, we're cloud users, right? We said we're born and raised in the cloud. We have organizations, and over time, if you don't clean that out, you're just going to have, financially, it's going to be painful,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not curating your architecture, and it used to be just assets, systems, applications, but now today, understanding where your data is, what you're using, how you're using it, and understanding when you need to get rid of it, right? When it's no longer useful, and create and optimize and lower your footprint. And in a sense, create a balance where we won't need as much energy because we're optimized in our use of data.
I think that's a brilliant takeaway to finish this discussion on sustainable technology. I should say. Thank you, panel. It's been a brilliant and very swift ride through all sorts of cul-de-sacs. But TP, Kenneth, Charmaine, and Rajesh, thank you very much indeed for joining us.